A warm welcome and a thank you for joining us on ERi-TV English News Broadcast. We're now ready for a domestic and international reporter for August 21st, 2026. I'm Heavenly Hunt, your news anchor for this session. I invite you to stay with us up until the end, and I begin with the top stories for tonight. National Conference on Eritrean Agricultural Studies concludes. Ambassador Bayena participates in Regional Ministerial Steering Committee meeting. In our international, leaders of 7 nations condemn Israeli settlement plan in West Bank. And the United States sanctions more Cuban companies and officials. Welcome again. In today's domestic news, the 2-day National Conference on Eritrean Agricultural Studies 2026, held at the National Confederation of Eritrean Workers Hall in Asmara, under the theme Advancing Sustainable Agri-Food Systems for National Economic Growth, concluded today. At the conference, 76 research papers were presented on topics including agricultural extension and farmers' adoption, agricultural digitalization, value chains and agribusiness, food safety, security and nutrition, agricultural biotechnology and laboratory services, climate change adaptation and mitigation, genetic resources and biodiversity conservation, and agricultural policy, regulatory frameworks and governance. The research papers presented by experts also covered the evaluation of sesame varieties for optimizing yield and cultivation opportunities, evaluation of fish amino acid and seaweed liquid fertilizer, on the growth and yield of barley, status of post-harvest handling and ripening methods of bananas, tenure security and agricultural development, mobilizing the diaspora in agro-industrial transformation, synergizing sustainable energy production and climate, documenting and registering flora in Eritrea, effect of compost on the physiochemical properties of versatiles and yield performance of wheat varieties, assessment of current dairy cattle performance, assessment of genetic diversity and population structure in Eritrean indigenous chickens, spatial and statistical variability analysis of satellite-based climate data, and a survey of an ectoparasitic organism of the tree locust, among others. In his concluding address, Dr. Efrem Gebrameskel, chairman of the conference coordinating committee, said that the conference had provided an important platform for presenting research findings, sharing professional experiences, and discussing the challenges and opportunities facing Eritrea's agricultural sector. Dr. Efrem went on to say that the key message emerging from the conference was the importance of strengthening the connection between research, policy, and implementation. He said that the discussions had also underscored the need for stronger collaboration among government institutions, research and higher education institutions, farmers, the private sector, and development partners. Noting that the idea of holding the conference stemmed from the International Conference on Eritrean Studies held in January 2025, Mr. Rafaina Berha, Minister of Agriculture, attributed the success of the conference to the preparations undertaken by the coordinating committee over approximately a year and a half, and congratulated the committee. The conference was attended by more than 300 senior government and PFDJ officials, experts, farmers' representatives, food processors, development partners, and invited guests. In another news, Ambassador Bayena Resom, Eritrea's ambassador to Kenya and Tanzania, participated in the 4th Regional Ministerial Steering Committee meeting convened in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania on 18 August under the theme Advancing Africa's Health Security and Sovereignty, Predictable and Innovative Investment in Maternal and Child Health and Primary Health Care. Representing Ms. Amina Nur Hussein, Minister of Health, Ambassador Bayena addressed the meeting and outlined Eritrea's community-based approach to primary health care. Eritrea strongly believes that resilient primary health care is the foundation of both improved health outcomes and stronger health security. We have invested in a community-based primary healthcare system anchored in a cost-effective basic healthcare package that extends essential services to rural, remote and nomadic communities, Ambassador Bayane stated. Noting that Eritrea's health policy does not stand alone, Ambassador Bayane said that the government's broader approach is to reach marginalized communities with an integrated package of basic services, including education, water, agriculture, and other essential services. Ambassador Bayane further reiterated Eritrea's readiness to share its experiences, learn from fellow member states, and support regional collaboration. Moving on, at a conference held in Keren to review progress made in efforts to eradicate illiteracy over the past 10 years, the Ministry of Education developed a 5-year strategic plan extending through 2030. At the national conference conducted from 18 to 20 August, Mr. Gebretzky Demame, Director General of Adult Education and Media, said that the Ministry of Education is working diligently to enable every citizen to become literate and continue learning through adult education programs, evening classes, and the establishment of community libraries. Mr. Gebretzky also called for the strengthened participation of partners in the effort. Presenting a detailed report on the progress of the adult education program, Mr. Gebretzky called for integrated efforts by all concerned institutions and partners to implement the 5-year strategic plan and enable residents of remote areas to benefit from the program. The participants held extensive discussions on the issues raised at the conference and adopted various recommendations. Commending the efforts being exerted by the Ministry of Education in collaboration with the Ministry of Local Government and the Ministry of Defense to eradicate illiteracy, Ambassador Abdullah Musa, Minister of Local Government, called on teachers to play a leading role in the endeavor. Do stay tuned, dear viewers, for we shall be back with the international news after the short break. Welcome back. Our focus now shifts to the global arena. Israel's plan to open up tenders for the construction of some 1,200 settlement homes in a strategically important part of the occupied West Bank have sparked fresh condemnation by major Western powers. In a joint statement, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway and Canada urged Israel to retract the plans immediately. At a time of grave instability in the West Bank, with unprecedented levels of violence by settlers against civilians and serious restrictions on the Palestinian economy, this decision is even more concerning, the statement from the European allies and Canada published on Thursday stated. Not only will the plans take the world further from peace, but they further undermine Israel's international standing, the statement added. All settlements are illegal under international law and under international pressure. Israel held off for decades on plans to build in E1 to the east of Jerusalem. Many of its allies and Palestinians argued this development would deal a major blow to hopes of a two-state solution, effectively cutting the West Bank in two and isolating East Jerusalem. In a separate statement, the UN Secretary General also said the E1 plan posed an existential threat to a contiguous Palestinian state, and so did Belgium's foreign minister. Israel has built about 160 settlements housing 700,000 Jews since it occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem during the 1967 Middle East War. An estimated 3.3 million Palestinians live alongside them. In another news, the United States has imposed a new round of sanctions on Cuban officials and companies, Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated. 9 state-owned mining, metal and building firms, the Ministry of Construction, and officials connected to a Cuban-based international institute have been named in the latest tranche of economic sanctions. Cuba has denounced all sanctions imposed by the Trump administration, which are part of a wider pressure against the Caribbean islands' leadership. US sanctions and an effective oil blockade have exacerbated already existing shortages of fuel, medicines and food in Cuba. With the island's aging electricity infrastructure heavily reliant on fuel imports, hospitals have resorted to using emergency generators, while citizens have been subject to frequent blackouts. The United States, which has maintained economic sanctions against Cuba since the 1960s, is also known to have blocked fuel shipments to that country to exert additional pressure. Numerous countries have repeatedly called for the lifting of the prolonged unilateral US economic embargo on Cuba. With this, we conclude our domestic and international report for this session. Dear viewers, now the top stories once more. National Conference on Eritrean Agricultural Studies concludes. Ambassador Bayene participates in Regional Ministerial Steering Committee meeting. Leaders of 7 nations condemn Israeli settlement plan in West Bank. And the United States sanctions more Cuban companies and officials. This was The World on Friday with ERi-TV English news broadcast. Dear viewers, from all of us here, thank you for watching.